Hello, welcome to our webinar today. I'm Ali Miller, I'm from Shared Lives Plus, and I am the Development Officer for Domestic Abuse and Modern Day Slavery. I'm with Anne Wyatt from Positive Steps today, and we're going to be talking about a Shared Lives pilot where we have been testing the Shared Lives model for survivors of domestic abuse. The aim of this project was to provide an alternative for women who are unable to access traditional refuge, or for women who are moving on from refuge. And we've been partnered with Safe Lives, who are a national domestic abuse charity. Positive Steps is one of two Shared Lives schemes that have been involved in this pilot. And they've had major findings around funding and around the prevalence of domestic abuse within the current Shared Lives community as well. So we're going to chat to Anne today, and she's going to tell us a bit about her experiences at Positive Steps of supporting women through the pilot. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Anne Wyatt. I work for Positive Steps. I'm a support manager here. I was tasked with the pilot. I've worked with the organisation for 3 years. We're a rural-based, Shropshire's a rural-based area.
Thanks, Anne. So I'm going to ask some questions. My first question is, what made you want to take part in the pilot?
I've always had a passion about domestic abuse. I was a very mature student where I studied criminology and psychology, and my dissertation was the challenges that the refugees face in the current financial situation. So when we were asked if we would like to express an interest in this project, I jumped at it straight away because I could see how the model of shared lives would so easily fit and be a stepping stone that refuge needed in the challenging times that they've got. It also meant that we could help with releasing the beds so that refuge could do their part, and we could then be the stepping stone onto it for people that aren't quite ready yet to go it all alone. I also have two very, very supportive bosses who are like, well, go for it, we support you with all the risk you're going to take with this. So
amazing, thanks, Anne. So how were you able to gauge whether a referral was appropriate? Because it's quite a new area for Shared Lives, isn't it?
It is indeed. We had the support of the Domestic Abuse Service, and they would provide us with their DASH risk assessments, which are very in-depth and show us that the risks that every day. When we first started the project, we all agreed that we would take either low to medium risks. That didn't always happen, but in that case, we had with the person we supported who was high risk, we had numerous meetings with all the people that had got involved with this young person, with probation, substance misuse, obviously the domestic abuse service. I have an awful lot of trust in our local domestic abuse service and knew that they wouldn't have put this person our way if they didn't think that we were capable with it. We also have our own risk assessments that we do. Also, at the end of the day, I put it towards the host, and the host that we had in mind for this person was prepared to take that risk as well. The other thing was that we do with the risk is to make sure that we move the person as far away from where the abuse took place as possible. We're very lucky in that respect, which is why I mentioned Shropshire being a rural area, is that our public transport system is not very good. And in that respect, that lent itself again to the project because it meant that it wasn't easy for the perpetrator to come anywhere near the survivor. The other thing is you go with your gut. And I'm a great believer in listening to what your body is telling you to do. And I think that's what it is with most people with shared lives, is that you can do every single risk assessment under the sun, but you get a feeling.
Yeah, and I guess you know your carers so well that you know where their strengths are and you know what they've done before in terms of supporting different people.
Yeah.
So who have you supported in this project, Anne, and how long have those arrangements lasted for?
We've supported a range of people, from people that have got extra needs to people that hadn't any extra needs at all. Our shortest project for the placement was for 2 months, and the longest is 6 months. We've also got somebody that had additional needs, so we got the social work team involved, and they did a care package. We've got a domiciliary side of the business, and the social work team and everybody thought, because we got the backing, that it would make more sense for the continuation of the care to carry on. So I'm still in touch with a couple of the ladies through that way, which is lovely for everybody, because it gives them still that face that they, you know, have known throughout their journey. It also makes them feel safe, for them, me, to introduce new people into their lives.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we said throughout the pilot, isn't it, about the flexibility of shared lives, is that, you know, you can have as much or as little support as you need, and actually that support can change. And I know that in Positive Steps you've been able to have a bit of day support and things like that to help people transition onwards.
Yeah.
So overall, kind of how has it been for you in practice? Like, have you felt like it was a success?
I think there's nobody that works for our organisation who have been, or from the outside agencies that have been involved with us, that don't say, they're very upset that it can't continue, because they realise how successful it has been and the massive difference it has made to the individuals we have supported. You know, within a matter of weeks, one of the ladies that was involved with probation, the probation officer just could not believe the turnaround of this person, in the fact that she was taking care of her appearance, she was more confident, she was able to speak up for herself. You know, all of the individuals, they are so thankful. But all we've done is the thing that the hosts do automatically with Shared Lives, and that just gives them some time and belief in themselves. So yeah, they're somebody was on antidepressants, that is gradually reducing the dosage. Somebody else was on methadone. They've now completely come off that at a much greater rate than was anticipated, you know. And again, the substance misuse team have put that down to the Shared Lives experience and the support that the host has been able to give that person going through the process.
Well, we've always talked about the kind of stability of having a secure base in Shared Lives, and how it is different from a lot of other kind of support services people have, because it is so stable and you're coming back to the same people day in, day out for however long that arrangements last. Do you think that's been a big part of, you know, setting the scene for somebody to recover so well?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, because they've never had this stability. Initially, people started to struggle with the care and attention that they were getting, which that you and I get as part and parcel of being able to live a normal life. Where these guys, you know, the hosts go at their paces, etc., and they know that there's been a couple of dodgy moments, but the hosts have coped with it, and that in turn has built up the trust between the host and the individual, because the individual knows, you know, that they were pushing boundaries, they were trying to see how safe this really is. Because if you think of their history, you know, they needed to make sure this person was going to be around for a while, whatever threw at them, and thankfully our hosts have coped fantastically with everything.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Anne. So now you've referred a few times to working in partnership with other organisations, and you've mentioned the domestic abuse service. Can you tell us a bit about those partnerships?
So the domestic abuse service, it took a while for us to develop the relationship, because at the start of the project we were unsure about funding, but once you fantastically found us the funding, we were able to go back, because in this current situation, you know, everybody is fighting over that little bit of money, and we needed to make them aware that we weren't there as competitors, we were there as a stepping stone, because we needed their expertise and their support, which they have been fantastic with. You know, we couldn't have done it without their support. And once they realised that we were there to give them a hand, the partnership working was absolutely fantastic. You know, the relationship I have now got with those people at the refuge is brilliant, and I hope they feel the same. We also had to develop relationships with the DWP, because when it came to claiming benefits for their housing element, universal credit, we hadn't got a slot for us, because we're unique, we were original, and it's taken a lot of phone calls, a lot of emailing, making them realise I wasn't going to go away without getting an answer, and they had to take responsibility. I again built up some fantastic relationships with the DWP. They want to be constantly kept informed of how this project was going, because they think it was fantastic. You know, it also, with having a host, it made their life easier, because we could put forward, you know, it's difficult for somebody to go on the phone or even on a computer and say, I'm really sorry, I'm a victim of abuse, where our hosts could do that. You know, lots of them that we supported before that, nobody knew their backgrounds, and they were being sanctioned left, right and centre because they weren't attending their meetings. The DWP have specified people to deal with people with victims of domestic abuse, and once we got those channels going, you know, everything became easier for everybody. So it made the DWP's life easier. They're not sanctioning these people because they now know. But for that individual, it's extremely hard for them to say, actually, I'm a victim of domestic abuse. So that we've learned an awful lot about that. Again, with housing, Shropshire Housing have been fantastically supportive with us. They couldn't do enough once they realised that there's a need for this, and again, it makes their life easier. The same with the substance misuse team, same with the psychological services. The fact that they've got somebody else to talk to, as in the host or myself, it helped them to work forward with the person that they were dealing with.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Anne. I think touch upon a few things that you said there. So firstly, around the funding, because that's been a really major kind of issue for the whole of the pilot, hasn't it? And
yeah.
I think from a shared lives perspective, we're so used to working with people that we support who have health or social care needs, and so they'll have health or social care funding. Whereas actually what we found in this project was that if people don't have a health or social care need, even if they've been a victim of domestic abuse, they won't necessarily have any entitlement to funding. And so it was really hard to find, you know, where's that money going to come from for us to provide a shared lives arrangement. So in the pilot, we were able to use some of the funds from the pilot. So the pilot was funded by Department of Culture, Media and Sport, under tampon tax funding. But outside of the pilot, that's going to be one of the biggest challenges around developing this work, is where do we find the funding from? So I said at the beginning, you're one of two schemes who's been involved, and I know that they had local links with the Police and Crime Commission, who were able to fund arrangements there, but that's not the case nationally. Every region looks different, doesn't it, in terms of what funding is available. And Shared Lives Plus are working on a model which is more accommodation based for people that need accommodation but not as much support. But I think that's definitely one of the things which we've coming out of this pilot and looking at our lessons learned is really now to develop different models that maybe don't need as high levels of support for people, but still provide someone with that safe and secure base that we were talking about. And the other thing I just wanted to touch on was you were talking about your hosts being such an important part of it, and it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because whenever any of us are in, you know, difficult times in our life and struggling, we all need that extra bit of support, and we need somebody who's able to say, right, well, let's have a look at these options, and oh, you know, if you have a conversation with this person in housing or at DWP or a job centre, you know, that you can help them understand your situation. But I think so often it's other people around us who help us to get there. So it's just kind of thinking about the hosts that have been involved. What training and skills did the hosts and yourself as the scheme, what did you need?
Well, Safe Lives came obviously a part and parcel of it. So they came and gave us some intensive training, and have always been in the background for us to touch upon if we found ourselves out of our depth. Our carers, hosts, have to go through, or don't have to, but they go through some intensive safeguarding and capacity training, deprivation liberties training to become a shared lives carer anyway. So they do that. The local council did a domestic abuse briefing sessions and are still holding those. So all our guys have attended those. Another element is the people that came forward. We put an open invitation to our carers to say, we're doing this, who would be interested? And some of them that came forward, one is a qualified advocate, so she has a vast amount of background training and qualifications. Another one is a counsellor for substance misuse. We've been extremely fortunate that you know, the added extras that our carers have got that they brought to the table. And the other thing is, like I said about having the gut instinct, it's what's inside. You know, obviously you need the training, you need to have tools in your box, but you know, our carers, I really believe, across the whole of Shared Lives, are very, very special people, and you know, they are born to care and they are born to get the best out of people, and that's what our guys do.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's, you know, from Shared Lives Plus, the national organisation for shared lives, and we see it in every area that Shared Lives operates in. It's and all of the schemes say that it's all about those individual carers and those individual hosts, and it is incredible. And I think, you know, a huge part of the success of Shared Lives generally is that one-to-one relationship, that person-centred relationship. And it is quite different to other forms of support, because you're able to, like you say, get the best out of people, and you're able to really understand what is it that this one person needs, what is it that this one person would benefit from. But the other thing I was thinking about hosts in particular is, I'm sure that they had questions around what would keep them safe and what would keep the person that's moving in with them safe. So I wondered what kind of things you've done to keep people safe within those arrangements.
The first thing that happens is that, you know, before everything goes through with the agreement, we have a disclosure in there that says that they cannot disclose where they are, any information about the host or the location. This we actually pinched from the domestic abuse service. They do that anyway, because it's about keeping those people, everybody safe. And so it wasn't to virtually all of the people that used our pilot, it wasn't anything unusual to be asked. That's the norm. And bearing in mind, some of these people have used refuge quite a few times. You know, they've been in and out, which again, going off a bit, is another success of the project, that these people are going on the right, they haven't gone back to the refuges. But the other thing is that when the move was going to happen, the domestic abuse service would contact the police on our behalf, and they would put a flag above the house so that any 999 call would be immediately responded to. There would be no questions asked. As soon as that number's dialed, that's it goes straight through to the police, and they would be there as quick as possible. They also allocate a designated officer that would go round as often or as not often as needed, but they'd got a port of call and they'd got a named person, so that who also was a specialism in domestic abuse. So again, the individual could feel safe and develop some trust with this person. It also meant that the host had the support from the police officers. There was other things that we knew we could tap on if we needed to, such as alarms. You know, the police were very, very good. We could have had whatever, but our carers and hosts who took the people on felt that they got, with what I just described, enough. They felt safe enough with that. And again, we live in a rural county, so to get to some of our people, it would take a lot of doing, which wouldn't say that it wouldn't happen, but you know, it would be very difficult to get to. Yeah, so that's what would happen. The domestic abuse were always on call, always seeing our people as well. You know, anything I ever needed, they were there, and they would support us in whatever was required.
I think we've talked already about how important those DA services are, but it's not just the support, and it's not just the being on call. It, like you said, you'd pinched some information and some processes from domestic abuse services, and I think that's been such an important part of what we've wanted to do. We haven't wanted to operate in a completely different way. We want to kind of build on that good practice that's already there. And I think you mentioned the disclosure and the agreement that you have with the person accessing shared lives and the host. So I know from my perspective, when I joined the project, one of my biggest questions was, well, what if somebody finds out where the host lives? But I know that you've had it written in that you're not allowed to disclose, and obviously all the different things we need to think about now about social media and not posting yourself in particular locations. And there's been a lot of things, hasn't there, that you've had to be mindful of throughout the project, but it sounds like you and the hosts have managed to maintain that.
Yeah, yes, actually, and the individuals accepted it much easier than I ever expected them to. You know, I don't know if I would have coped with saying you can't disclose. You know, we've taken these individuals away from, yes, it was a dangerous place, but it was also a safe place for them because they knew how to play these perpetrators. And I am asking them to take a massive leap of faith with me, to come with me, to live with a complete stranger. You know, it was massive for these people to undertake. And thankfully they saw something in us, you know, and it's worked.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and it's a big learning that's come out of this project as well, is although on the face of it, moving into a shared lives arrangement might be a safe accommodation because you're going to be free from abuse, it's still not familiar. And those old, you know, living with a perpetrator might be more familiar. And so actually, yeah, it might feel less scary than doing this. But I know that you've worked really closely with survivors who've accessed shared lives to help them kind of build their understanding of what shared lives is, but also to build trust in you and positive steps, and support people into kind of feeling confident enough to do that. So I wondered if you could talk on behalf of some of those women and give us a sense of what it's been like from their perspective.
Yeah, you know, to start with, they all said it was very, very scary. And it took a while for them to build their relationships and trust in the host and with ourselves. But, you know, we've had so many successes, we've got people who are living independently. We've got a lady that started a new relationship. You know, this young person is empowered so much that she knows what is right and what is wrong and what is acceptable. You know, and it's lovely to see that I wish we'd have, another thing now that I wish we could have done a before and after shot, because the changes in these people, you know, people living independently, then being able to choose what paper or what paint they colour their walls, something they've never ever had control over, you know, what they want to purchase to eat that night, you know, that they're doing it themselves. We've got another lady that has support going in, but again, you know, she's doing it, and most of them, the majority of them, have, and so far, and touch wood, gone back to the perpetrators or gone back into, which we know is the case, into another violent relationship. Because I think we've been allowed, from the amazing work that the domestic abuse service has done, we've then taken it that step forward and opened up the support they've got. They've now got all these different people around them. So it isn't just, you know, it stops at refuge, because, you know, refuge, they do their outreach, but funds, etc., there's only so much, and these individuals needed that little bit more, and it's proven, you know, it's worked. It's saved so much money, because they haven't gone back into the criminal justice system. They haven't gone to the hospital to have themselves patched up again because they've received an horrific beating. You know, you just couldn't put a figure on how much it's the individuals it saved them. You know, they are such different ladies that, you know, they're so much more empowered. It's just wonderful. They understand what their rights are. You know, they even understand about Clare's law. It's just fantastic what the project has been able to achieve for these people.
I think it's largely to do with that strength in the partnership, like you say, because we know that shared life schemes can't do what domestic abuse services do, and domestic abuse services can't provide what shared life schemes can. And it does, throughout the project, it does kind of make you feel like, actually, yes, having the specialist support of domestic abuse services with things like the Freedom Programme, where people are learning what their rights are, that they're entitled to, as you say, do all those very simple things, choose what they have for tea that night, or decorate a house, live in a space the way they want it to be. But they couldn't have done that without the support of Shared Lives, who are able to kind of implement some of that learning that comes from that very specialist domestic abuse sector practice. So it has been a huge kind of success from Shared Lives perspective, seeing how well in Shropshire especially you've been able to develop that relationship. And Wendy Bullman, who's the head of the Shropshire Domestic Abuse Service, is joining us for another webinar. So we'll be able to hear from her side as well. So thanks so much for all of that, Anne. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
I think we've covered everything. Yeah.
So, like I said, in the next session, we're going to speak to Wendy, who leads on the domestic abuse service in Shropshire, and she's been working with the same women that you have, hasn't she, Anne?
She has.
Are we going to find out really more about the importance of working in partnership, with which Wendy will be able to expand on a bit? And I guess what I'd like to end on, Anne, is you know, you're coming from a shared lives service who historically has supported mainly people with learning disabilities and people with health and social care needs, and you've taken this step because it's something that you believe shared lives could do. But what would your advice be to other schemes if they are thinking about working with people who've experienced domestic abuse, or if they get a referral for somebody who's got health and social care needs who may also have experienced domestic abuse? What would your advice be to the schemes?
It would be straight away to contact their local domestic abuse scheme, because you need them. Well, you don't need them, but it makes life a lot easier if you've got them on board, if the referral hasn't come that way, because like I said, there is outreach work they can do, and they're the expertise in this. You also need to build the links with everybody else that covers this person, you know, such in the job centres. You know, you need to find out who the domestic abuse worker is there, because it will make the person's life so much easier and the journey and much safer for them and the host and yourself. And it's good to get, you know, let them know that these schemes are in place. And finally, is just don't give up. You are going to have to make yourself a real pain. But if you keep phoning, they can't refuse you forever.
Well, thanks, Anne, for talking today, and thanks for all the incredible work you've been doing. I think we've been able to get a sense here of what a massive impact that's had for women.
And no, thank you, Alison, because I couldn't have done it without your support as well. So thank you so much for being there at the end of the phone for me.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's lovely to speak to you, and I hope that these webinars will be helpful to other schemes who are interested in doing the same. And whilst our pilot has ended, Shared Lives Plus are always here to talk to people who are interested in developing their schemes. And off the back of the fantastic work that's been done in this pilot, we've developed some guidance for schemes as well, and that is available to anybody that needs it. So we hope that people will get in touch. Okay, thank you again, Anne.
Thank you, bye.